So this is going to go through how to choose your bag, how to choose the clubs in your golf bag. I mean, every club is a different tool for a different situation. And I think that when we look at the maximum number of clubs that we have, that we're allowed to have at 14, we start to think we need 14 clubs when some people really don't. But I want to go through how it is to select which clubs you need for your bag. So right off the bat, we're going to start with driver. Find the driver that you hit the farthest. That's pretty simple. Get fit for a driver, get the right loft, the right shaft, the right head, and make sure you get a driver that makes the ball go the farthest. Now, the next thing is choosing the club which goes the farthest off the ground. So that's a fairway wood. And I think that, when we think about a three wood could be anywhere from 13 degrees to about 18 degrees. And that's a pretty wide number. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to choose the right clubs for your bag. I mean, we have a rule in golf that we can only have 14 golf clubs. So most people have 14, not that everybody needs them all, but we have 14 clubs to choose from. And I want to go about how to select each club and look at it as though it's a tool. So the first thing is the driver. Find a driver that goes the farthest for you, right? We want to try and find the right head, the right loft, the right shaft at the right length that is going to help you hit the ball the farthest off the tee. That's number one. Number two, find the golf club that goes the farthest off the ground. So the fairway woods nowadays can be anywhere from 13 degrees to 18 degrees for a 3-wood or a 4-wood. Well, choose a bunch of different clubs and find which one goes the farthest off the ground. Personally, for me, I don't hit a 15-degree club as far as I hit a 17-degree club. The 17-degree club goes farther in the sky, it carries a little farther, and ends up actually going a farther distance even though a 15 is supposed to go farther. Now that I've got my 2 woods figured out, I want to figure out, based on the iron selection that I'm going to go with, 4-iron to pitching wedge perhaps, how far does my 4-iron go? And once we choose how far the 4-iron goes, and we figure out how far that flies, we can then gap in clubs differently between that 4-iron all the way up to that fairway wood that you chose. It might be another fairway wood. It might be something at 20 degrees, 21 degrees as a 5-wood. It might be a hybrid club. But you want to try and find something in between there that allows you to narrow the gap between the longest iron off the ground and the longest wood you can find off the ground. Now, I'm going to jump all the way down to the bottom now. If we look at which wedge you like to chip with around the green, because there's a lot of people that like to have a go-to wedge, whether it's a 60, a 58, or a 56. If you've got a go-to wedge you use around the green, start with that one. Personally, for me, I like to use a 58-degree wedge. That's the one I select around the green most often. And then from there, I'm going to go back to the irons and find my pitching wedge distance. If my pitching wedge goes, say, 135 yards, and my full swing 58 goes about 90 yards, I've got a 45-yard window in there. So I would need something else between the 58 and, say, the 47 or 48 or 46-degree pitching wedge. So that could be 2 options or could be 1 option. We can choose something between 48 and 58 and go right in the middle and choose a 53. If the 53-degree wedge gives you the right gap, distance gap between those two, because you want to find the clubs that actually give you a distance gap, not a loft gap so much. But I'm going to start with a 53 because that's right between my pitching wedge and my lob wedge. Now, if I wanted 2 wedges in between, well, I could have something like a 58 and then a 54 and then a 50 and then a 46. That gives you more variety and more options in the short end. However, I find most people that have 4 wedges, the wedge that comes right after their pitching wedge, being a gap wedge, is a very one-dimensional club. It'll go 120 yards, but if it's 115, you'll choose a different club, and if it's 125, you'll choose a different club. So try to make sure that if you go with a pitching wedge plus 3 wedge combo, that there's actually useful situations for all of those wedges. So now that we've decided what wedge combo you like, all the way up to the 4-iron, we can then figure out what do you want in the middle. What do you want between a 4-iron and a fairway wood? And that could be a hybrid, that could be a driving iron, that could be another fairway wood, it could be 2 hybrids. There's lots of different scenarios there. But we want to make sure that however far you hit the longest wood off the ground, that we gap appropriately all the way down to our irons. So for instance, if you have the longest fairway wood going 160 yards, and you go all the way down and you keep looking at about a 20-yard gap to another one at 140 and then another one at, say, 120, you probably don't need a 4, 5, 6, 7 iron. You might start your irons at 8 iron all the way down to wedge. And there's a good situation where you don't need 14 golf clubs. But the idea here is to figure out how far those clubs go in a given situation on the golf course. You know, if you're a good player and your 4-iron goes 200 or 220 yards, well, that's going to be a 4-iron from a tee or from the fairway. You might need something at a very similar loft to help you hit the ball out of the rough from that area. So when I start to look at the high-end clubs, the 4-iron, the hybrid, the driving iron, the fairway wood, I might have two clubs that have very similar lofts to them, but if they're built differently, they're going to be useful in different situations. So when you start thinking about all the clubs in your bag as tools, and you recognize at the high end, being those longer clubs, you want about a 20-yard gap between them because, well, a green's almost 20 yards, and we're not trying to dial in a 3-wood from the fairway. You're trying to hit the green. So try to figure out which tools are going to be best for you, because I can tell you that the best players in the world might have a 19-degree fairway wood and a 21-degree 4-iron, and they're going to be about a 20-yard gap between them. So find a way to choose the irons and choose the clubs that work best for you on the course. Now, when it comes to fitting, most of the time you're going to be fit with a 7 or a 6-iron. So I always recommend finding the driver, find the fairway wood, order your irons out, and save the middle club, the club between that 4-iron and the fairway wood that goes the farthest off the ground. Add that club in after the fact. Go to the golf course, figure out how far the long iron goes, figure out how to play the 3-wood, and then from there start filling in that gap. But since we don't know how far your 4-irons go, because most people can't fit for those, you want to be able to take those irons to the course and use them first. So I hope this has given you a bit of a different way to think about the golf clubs that go in your bag, because this isn't 1980 where you get a driver 3-wood, 5-wood, and then 3-iron to pitching wedge, and you just accept the way that it is. Nowadays, we get to choose the tools that we need in order to hit the shots that we need to hit on the course. And Bernhard Langer has always been an awesome example for that. He's had a bag with 7 or 6 different brands of clubs in it. And even in his irons, he'd have a Hogan 5-iron and a Ping 6-iron, because he figured out that when he had a certain yardage and he needed a club, he wanted the club that felt the most comfortable to get the ball to go the most repeatable distance. And sometimes it's not always matching your clubs like that. So try to take a look at that, and next time you go for a club fitting, take this information to help you build your set that's going to fit your bag.